How's it going, everybody? This is John, and today we are celebrating just over 1 year of the JTech 95 channel. I want to take this opportunity to thank every one of you who have subscribed, commented, liked, watched any of the videos I've done. I just want to say that I am very appreciative to every one of you. You guys are awesome. And this whole retro computer community, I mean, it's fantastic. It's changed a lot over the years. LGR just did a video yesterday about his 15th anniversary. I started watching LGR way back. I mean, back with his first couple of videos, and been watching him ever since. And a lot of other channels, Necroware, the 8-Bit Guy, all sorts of different guys, and they all do fantastic content. It's great. I love watching this stuff, and I like making it too. But I thought today, instead of going over a system, instead of going over a piece of software, I figured today we would go back in time and would kind of explain what got me started in the retro computer phenomenon in the first place. And to do that, we're going to have to go way back to 1995, the year I was born. At that time, Windows 95 had been out for several months, and obviously I was too young to remember, but I do remember that the first computer that I used was that basic time 486-33. That was our upstairs computer. I played all sorts of kids' games on that one. Math Ace, Willy Wabbit and his magical books, the Putt-Putt and Freddy Fish games. There's a couple games by Soft Key that I played back then, like Safety Scavenger Hunt, The Otter's Adventure, all sorts of things like that. But you know, at a young age, I was very much into computers. We didn't have an awful lot of money when I was growing up, so while all my friends were off playing, you know, new PlayStation titles, new stuff from Nintendo, I was on the computer playing games that were probably 7-8 years old at that point. But I enjoyed it. You know, I always loved playing on the computer. I remember at one point I had to have been like 5 or 6 years old, and my grandparents came over to visit, and I don't remember this, but my father was telling me about one day when the grandparents came over. My grandpa was very impressed by just watching me play a computer game. I think it was the Seaside Adventure with Professor Iris. I was playing that or something like that, and I guess my grandpa made the comment, you know, wow, he's so young, you know. How is he able to, you know, understand the computers that well, you know, and stuff like that, you know. And it was ironic because at the time, my grandparents were still using an old IBM PS2 Model 30. That was their first computer, and I think it was mostly for my grandma, because my grandpa, he pretty much didn't want anything to do with it. And that kind of went for both of my grandpas, actually. But no, and, you know, I just thought I'd throw in that little anecdote. But no, I got a little older, and we upgraded to a couple of HP Vectras. And those had Windows 95 on them. And played a lot of the same games, and a lot of newer ones, too, that I could play with Windows 95 that didn't work on the old 486-33 because it's just too slow. When I was a kid, I remember that 486-33, as I had mentioned in the video I did on the machine way back, that machine used to crash a lot. It turned out to be a cache memory problem, which I found out quite a few years after the fact. But I remember that whenever the computer would crash, well, let me start over. You know how when a printer, the paper jams into it, they call it a paper jam. Well, whenever the computer would crash, I did not refer to it as "Hey, Dad, hey, Mom, the computer crashed," I would say, "Hey, Mom, hey, Dad, the computer jammed." Because I associated the printer with the computer, so I figured, well, if the printer can jam, why can't the computer too? Which, looking back, I mean, I guess that's one way of putting it. You have problems, things jam up, and Windows says, "I'm not working today." But anyway, yeah, we upgraded from the Vectras. Well, let me back up a little bit. My dad experimented with Linux, Mandrake Linux version 7.0, and there was a couple versions before that. And that was a friend of his that got him into Linux. And my dad liked Linux. I don't remember much about it. I remember he had it, and I remember tinkering around with it, but not an awful lot. The main thing with Linux I remember is playing, I can't remember the name of it. I'll put a thing down here in post editing what the name of the game was. But it was the one where you had that penguin on his belly flying downhill. I remember playing that one, and there was another one called Pingus or Pingus, however you pronounce it. It was like a Lemmings style game, but with Tux, the Linux penguin. I remember that mostly about Linux. Most of my computer experience has been with Microsoft Windows. Now, that's a little bit of prehistory. What really got me into retro computing was, well, in my very first video I did on this channel was that 486 DX266. That was a computer that was owned by a friend of the family's that eventually went to my other grandparents. Not the ones I was talking about early in the video. This is my other grandparents on my mother's side. They got the machine, used it for a short time, and then they upgraded to a Pentium 3, which was a huge upgrade from a 486-66. Anyway, somehow we got a hold of it, and my dad set it up in the basement, and it had Windows 3.1, and one of the drives in it was the extra, the black full height 5 1/4 out of the old IBM 5150, because he had put a Seagate 20 meg hard drive into that way back, and he just had the drive lying around, and so he stuck it in there. But anyway, I remember that being downstairs, and at that time it only had 2 games on it. It had Goofy's Railway Chase or whatever, and it had a game suite called Fun Pack from WizardWorks, and that had games like Blitzer, Chomp, Block Breaker kind of thing, an Asteroids clone, things like that. Well, fast forward a few years, I was about, I had been 12, 13, maybe 14 years old, and I wanted to put a sound card in that machine, because evidently at one point the sound card got taken out. And so I asked my dad, "Hey, how do I put sound on this thing? Because all we has that PC speaker." And so he pulled out an old Sound Blaster AW32 card that he had in storage. He pretty much didn't throw away any of these parts or machines, and that helped me get into the hobby as well. And I'm glad he didn't throw all that stuff away, because it's fascinating. But anyway, he brought it out, and he brought out a book called CD-ROMs for Dummies. and he told me to go through it, and that kind of explained, yeah, the book was about CD-ROMs, but it did explain a little bit about how certain parts of multimedia components inside a personal computer worked. And he also gave me the manual for the Sound Blaster 32. And I mean, he helped me with it. But after doing that, up to that point, I had seen the inside of a computer, but I really hadn't done it. It, backtracking a little bit, I had to have been about 12 years old. Had to have been. Because by the time I was 14, I was already digging into it and changing things around. But anyway, after putting that sound card in there, I was fascinated by the inner workings of a computer. And obviously, I knew my dad would never let me rip into the family computer that we were using at the time, which was some Athlon with Windows XP. But he let me fiddle around with that 486. And from that point on, I was hooked. I mean, I was doing all sorts of things. I was swapping hard drives in and out of that machine, trying different peripherals, trying different parts, figuring out how video card drivers work, sound card drivers, just trying to understand how to do certain things in a retro computer. A little bit later, I uncovered the Basic Time 486, which had been put into storage down here, as well as his 386 that he used for work here in the basement for business, and the IBM 5150. And I asked my dad, hey, do you mind if I fiddle around with those too? And he said, go ahead, knock yourself out. And that really kicked it into high gear, because at that point I didn't just have one old machine to work on, I had several. And it was fantastic. I was installing Windows on those things and installing different versions of DOS, and installing games, seeing what worked, what didn't, seeing how the different speeds would affect how different games and programs performed. And it was a great time. I mean, I loved it then. I mean, I love it now. But at the time, it was all new. Wow, this is really cool. Wow, I'm actually inside the guts of the machine. This is really neat. For a short time there, I slowly got out of the hobby, because I also am into other hobbies as well, like collecting vinyl records, and I'm a model railroader as well. Just figured I'd throw that out there. But yeah, I stopped doing it for a short time, and then ran into an old buddy of mine named Travis. He and I had grown up together since we were little guys, and found out that he was into computers too. So I said, hey, this is really cool. Let's talk about this. So we started talking about computers and all that good stuff, and he was telling me all about, the new advancements that had been made with personal computers, and this was around 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. And we decided that we wanted to start a podcast, which didn't go anywhere, but it was fun. And I started getting back into computers again and fiddling around with them. And at the time, retro computer software, hardware, machines, they were a lot cheaper. That Gateway 2000 machine that I showcased in one of the videos, the Windows 95 monster, I picked that up with the monitor, keyboard, and everything else for $20 at a garage sale just across the street. A couple of the other machines I picked up, they were either given to me, or I picked them up at thrift stores, flea markets, whatever, for dime a dozen. You used to be able to pick up those old computers, 386 and 486 machines, dirt cheap. Even cheaper for the Pentiums and things. But not anymore. I mean, yeah, the year 2020, yeah. I'm sure we all know about that debacle, but no, in recent years, the price on these things has gone through the roof. I mean, it's insane. You used to be able to pick up some of these old machines for $10-15. Now, you're lucky to find a working system for under $200-300, and it's nuts. But the community is still there. I mean, you can... Back then, if you had a peripheral or something go bad, I mean, you had to be good at soldering, or if you needed something and you couldn't find it, you had to figure out how to make the parts or peripherals yourself. Figure out how to make CF cards work and things like that. But present day, it's fantastic. I mean, there's all sorts of groups out there, GitHub, PCBWay, places where you can order parts that people have designed and made, and it just makes life a lot easier. An awful lot easier when working with retro computers. And it's fantastic. And now you have channels dedicated specifically to repair and maintenance of these old machines and fixing busted motherboards, busted cards, like the channel Necroware that I just mentioned earlier. His channel is fantastic. I've learned a lot from him. But yeah, the retro computing community has changed a lot. In terms of prices of certain retro pieces, I mean, and software, not forget software. I mean, you see copies of things like Commander Keen, Blood, all sorts of stuff going for ridiculous prices now. And I mean, granted, I mean, supply and demand, it's a factor, but ow. But it's just one of those things. I mean, you look at games for the Nintendo 64, even the Nintendo DS, the Wii, things like that, the GameCube. Games for those systems have gone through the roof as well, and it's just the way things have gone. But other than that, the retro computing community, I think, has gotten a lot. It's gotten a lot easier to meet people with the same interests in the same hobby. And I mean, shoot, there's VCF Midwest, which I am planning on going to this year with my buddy Mike from the channel Calculate. Touch on that here in a minute. But yeah, things like that, all sorts of LAN parties that people hold, computer swap meets and things like that. I remember going to computer shows back when I was a little kid, and you used to be able to pick up software, cards, drives, old things, you know, real cheap, and build your own systems. You don't see that anymore. You see it a little bit more now, but, you know, for retro. Back then, you know, the computer shows were for people who were wanting to build machines that they would be using, you know, for modern day uses, not for retro. You don't see that anymore. I mean, there's still a few stores where you can get parts. I mean, Best Buy, but their numbers of parts that they sell have gone down a lot since I was young. But other places like Micro Center, I mean, fantastic place. I go there a lot. Sometimes a little more often than I probably should, but but no, it's great. I mean, to be able to go to these conventions and things and meet other people that are into the same hobby. As for I mentioned Mike from Calculate. I met him about a year or two ago, and he further expanded my interest in retro computing when he made me aware, you know, hey, you know, you have these machines and boards that don't work and you're not sure why. Let me show you how to troubleshoot a motherboard. And he really got the ball rolling on repairs. If I hadn't met him and he taught me a lot of the things that he knew and tricks of the trade and things, a couple of my videos, especially the one about restoring that what was it called? The Leading Technologies PC partner. Videos like that would not have even been a thing because I would have not even known what I was doing. But thanks to him, you know, I've gotten a lot more comfortable doing things. If I can backtrack once again, that 486-66 that I had early on that kind of kickstarted the whole retro computing phenomenon for me. At one point, I was working on that machine, and I wanted to take the board out, get all the dust off it, clean off everything, and do all that good stuff, which, looking back at the time, I shouldn't have been doing because I didn't know what I was doing. I pulled all the jumpers off the board. I still can't believe I did that, without knowing where they all went. I took a picture, but then I deleted it off my phone. And I tried to find how to put it together, so I'm looking all over, and you know, at the time I didn't know what the heck to do, so I'm looking around and I'm like, oh, that board looks kind of similar, you know, I'm just gonna put it this way and hope it works. Yeah, that was a bad idea. I ended up frying the board, and that killed me. It was around that time that I stopped doing retro computers for a while because I was so distraught. I was like, this is the machine that got me into this whole thing, and I killed it. Why? But, you know, I put another 486 board in there, which was pretty lousy, but it worked for the time. Then I met Mike, and he helped me figure out what the board that got destroyed was, because it turned out he had one in his collection. I looked at it and I was like, hey, that looks really familiar. And he and I researched it a little bit, and I was like, wow, that's the board that was in it that I killed. And I looked around online. It was that PC Chips M912. And I paid a little bit of money for it because they are expensive. But I finally was able to get that 46DX2 machine back to the way it was, the way I remember it, when I was younger. And I love it because it's got American Megatron's Win BIOS. I mean, it's so freaking cool. The Windows 3.1 style GUI and the BIOS. I mean, it's great. I love it. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, that's beginning to end. I mean, what got me into the hobby, a little bit of my early experiences with personal computers, and things like that. It's crazy to see how far computing has come over the years. I mean, growing up using Windows 3.1 and later 95, 98, skipping Windows ME, obviously, going to Windows XP. We held on to XP for a long time. We didn't even bother with Vista. We held on to XP, and then we got Windows 7 just a little under a year after it came out. We got a laptop. It was an old i3 HP, and I can't remember the model. I think it was a Pavilion of some sort, but anyway, it had Windows 7 on it, and I remember thinking, wow, this is really cool. What else can they do? Like, I mean, you know, how much farther can they take this? Because seeing how far Windows had come at that point was incredible, but now, shoot, we're on Windows 11, and in just a year, a little under a year, Windows 10 is going to be, they're going to be dropping support for it. Wow, it's hard to wrap your mind around it, how far we've come. But, you know, it's also fascinating to see that a lot of people have not forgotten the roots and have continued to keep the flame alive for the love of retro hardware and systems. And I think that's fantastic. And really, aside from being a hobby, you can learn quite a bit from working on these old machines. I mean, just seeing the ingenuity, and they did what they could with what they had. I mean, it's the same concept now, but back then it was a little different. And it's fantastic, and it's sometimes overwhelming to see how far we've come, but who knows how computers are going to be in the next 10 years. Who knows if some of these retro machines of mine will still be running in 10 years. Because nothing lasts forever. I think an important thing to take away from this whole thing is, even if, you know, these systems, games, software, things like that are old, they're not necessarily useless. Yeah, back in 2009, 2008, you know, these systems and things were considered to be junk. They were fodder for the scrapyard. But it's incredible to see that now there's an intense passion for them, and there's a growing market and demand for these things. So the next time you look at your old 4th gen i3 or i5 sitting in the corner of your office or something like that, and you think, you know, I ought to just throw that thing away, it's useless. Hold on for a little while. You never know what's going to happen. We said the same things about our old Pentium 1s, 486s, Pentium 2s. We said the same thing. Look at it now. So just because something is old doesn't mean it's useless, and it doesn't mean it's worthless. It's a hobby that you can take pride in, and it's a hobby you can learn from a lot too, meet a lot of really cool people, and just all in all just have a good time doing it. But I think I'm going to wrap it up here and do a little bit of fiddling around with this thing. I got a couple ideas up my sleeve for a video to come out with soon. And once again, I want to thank everyone out there who has subscribed to the channel, liked these videos, commented on them, asked questions, send me emails. I love hearing from you guys, and I hope you guys enjoy the content that I put out. You guys are a blessing, and I want to thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. And and just let you know that you guys are freaking awesome. Anyway, guys, hope to see you in the next video, and I'll catch y'all later. See ya.